Welcome to Designers at Work, World of Warcraft World Creation.
All right. Did you guys get a chance to see Eric Braddock here on the artist stage? Anybody see that? Well, he forgot to mention his name, so that was Eric Braddock. And now you guys are all artists, all right? Yes. Cool. All right, so welcome to World of Warcraft World Creation.
Hi, I'm James Chadwick, lead level designer for the World of Warcraft team. I've been with the company for about 19 years. Can't tell you how blessed by these people, but the other people that are on the level design team, and get to actually share with you guys something that we don't usually get to share with the public.
Exactly, and we're glad to have you, Jim.
Same here.
Awesome. My name is Gary Plattner. I've been working that's my family.
Gary gets...
I pay them. I've been working at Blizzard for 20 years now. All that time I've been working on the World of Warcraft team. Most of that time on the art team, I was lead environment artist for a long time. But now, for about the past 5 years, I've been a principal level designer. Best job in the company.
He found his true...
I think I did. So, we are all level on the team. So we get to work with practically everybody on the WoW team, right?
We deal with everybody. Like one of probably the few departments gets to deal with sound, props, WMO, environment.
That's right.
West.
And we take all of the art, all of the trees, all of the rocks, all of the buildings, and we put it all together and make it into this massive game. So a good description of what we do is world building, essentially.
Probably the closest.
So, yeah, that's right. So we figured a good theme for this panel and a good thing to remember would be collaboration, because that's the thing I think we should all come away from because we work with so many other people.
Yeah, there's not one person that takes us home and finishes all the way to the plate.
That's right.
The whole idea is trying to work with not only the other departments, but within ourselves, call each other out, see what we think we're doing right, what we're doing wrong.
That's right, that's right. The other thing that's really cool about this panel is that we're going to be showing you our newest locations from our latest expansion, Shadowlands.
Yeah, we've always hidden that.
That's right.
We've always kind of shown you things that we've already done or things we've just done just for the show. This is the first time you're going to see things that are work in progress, where we're still kind of doing the iteration process.
That's right. You won't see any of this stuff at any other panel, so I'm excited about that. Another cool thing is when we ship this...
You might not see it at all.
It might be different. Might be the same. We'll see. We call that iteration.
Is that what we call it?
That's what we're supposed to call it.
That's a nice name.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so let's meet our level designers. You guys ready? Let's start right here with Kyle. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Everybody, thanks for coming all the way out here today. I know everybody came really far to be here. I'm Kyle Aronson. I'm a senior level designer on the World of Warcraft team. I've been here at Blizzard since 2010. But prior to that, I was a graphic designer and illustrator in the skateboard and music industries. And I spent all my spare time staying up late at night making maps for first-person shooters. And since I've been here at Blizzard, I've worked on Spires of Iraq, Stormheim, Drustvar, a bunch of dungeons and raids. And I'm really excited to show you guys Nyalotha before you head to Shadowlands today.
Awesome.
That's it. Thank you, Kyle. Let's go through it.
All right, let's go over here and meet Victor. Thanks, Kyle. You wouldn't know he was part of the skateboard industry at all.
No one got it.
Absolutely. All right, Victor. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name is Victor Cordes. I'm a level designer here on World of Warcraft. I'm really excited to be here at BlizzCon today. My first Blizzard game ever was Warcraft 2. It was also the first map editor I ever used. So that, along with that epic game manual that came with it, really inspired me to pursue making games. I graduated from Purdue University's computer graphics department. That was despite my WoW addiction. And I've been working in the game industry for about 10 years now, almost entirely on MMORPGs. The last 5 of those have been here at Blizzard. And I've had the pleasure to work on Stormheim, Suramar, and Suramar City, Terrorguard Sound, and the Pirate Dungeon Freehold. And for Shadowlands, Ardenweald and Revendreth, the latter of which I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Nice.
Victor. Yes.
Victor, he's done almost everything. All right, let's meet one more right over here with me this way. Let's see Christy. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My fan club, of course, very important.
Yes.
So you pay people too.
So I'm Christy Moray, and I've been working building worlds for 9 years now. I got my start fresh out of school working on a game called WildStar, and unfortunately that had to end. So after that, I took a brief detour into the online mobile space, which was a wild ride. I'm super grateful to be here on the World of Warcraft team now. Since I've been here, I've covered a corner of Stormsong and Honeycomb. I followed that up by covering a large swath of Nazjatar and Kelp. And I am currently the level design point on the very recently announced Maldraxxus, which I am appropriately covering in bones. It's very metal, and I can't wait to show you guys today.
Hardcore.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christy. Give it up for her.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
move
good.
out here. All right. So what we're going to show you is a piece of our in-house software called WoW Edit. It's been through a lot of changes. Jim and I have been using this piece of software forever, and it has been changed and improved over the years. Yeah, almost improved on a daily basis sometimes, right?
Except for the water tool.
Right.
What we're going to show you too is we're going to show you the stages that we go through. It's hard to compact about 45 minutes and show you what it is to create a design or do design. But we've tried to break it up into 3 primary questions that show you our process.
That's right. The first question is going to be our blue sky time. What happens in the very beginning when we're trying to figure out what the heck to do, how far can we take things, and how we go from there. That's a really fun part. The second question, sorry, Jim, real quick.
Oh, we didn't get interrupted.
Is the middle part. What happens after that? The iteration.
There's a lot of it. That's where we've gone from spending a lot of time on his own, only to find out it's not working. It's not something we decided we like. So we'll actually change it all the way through and make it a desert to a jungle to snow.
That happens. It's the longest part of the process. The last one is my very favorite. It is polish. So that's the time we get to demonstrate the story and the details and all of the parts that we were hoping it would be.
That's
right. Because by then we would have gotten all of the art pieces. We know the scale of everything. We know the size. And that's the most fun.
We kind of call it the butterfly pass, where you're putting the last bit of details for the player, making sure that it hits the camera, to just little vignettes around the zone. Make sure about every 12 to 15 seconds you're seeing something interesting to tell a story that's going on besides the one that you're playing.
That's right.
I feel like it's living.
Okay, let's get started. We can talk all day. I wish this panel was 2 hours, but it's not. So we're going to start with the first question. How do you get started? We're going to start right over here with Christy. So come on over here and let's see what you got. All right, so what you're going to see when we get it up on screen, Christy's work is going to be right over here. So you'll see everybody's work on the stage, but when we're talking to Christy, this is what we're talking about. Okay, if you could...
You see it's very polished.
All right.
Yes,
There you go.
all right. So, Christy, what are you working on and how did you answer our first question? How do you get started?
Well, I get started by chatting with our visual development team as well as our 3D environment art team. They both provide me some really awesome concepts. The 3D environment team in particular designed all of these really neat sort of spooky spider leg type assets for our environments. And you can see I've sort of got some textures lined up here to sort of get myself started in this big gray map here. The actual first thing that I do actually is pull up this big map here. I've made this in Photoshop. It's just a 2D top-down map. Super simple, nice and easy, sort of to get the general idea of where the player is going to start, what are some possible road and hub locations. This evolves really quickly because we get into the gray map phase very fast. So this ends up actually being a trace of the actual 3D that I started to build. And while working on this, you can see it's sort of got grids here. It's got smaller POIs broken up into more detailed spaces. The roads have gotten a lot more depth to them. And this will even progress to a later stage of map where it's actually overlaid on top of the 3D, because at this point it's much easier to explain to our quest designers where everything is based on what is actually in the game.
Well, it helps quest design real quick. I don't want to interrupt too much, but it helps quest design too also fill out the flow. They can actually start working out where your first point of interest is that you're going to hit and then work your way through the zone and help us together iterate over that.
That's right.
Oh, definitely. Being able to communicate with design in an effective manner is really important to make sure that we're able to have art and level stuff really work well and sort of flow. If they were trying to work in a vacuum without us, it'd be kind of a bummer. But we have a lot of fun collaborating with them. And when we get into the gray map stage here, you can see things are really simple. We've got these big blocky mountains going on here. Just sort of threw them in real quickly. We can make huge changes really fast if we want to get new peaks to spike up, or if we want to end up maybe sinking this necropolis down a little bit more. Maybe I don't want it in that pit there, so we'll just undo that real quick. But an important thing about being in the gray map phase is that it means that we can actually get down on player level and see how our space is shaping up. I figured out pretty early on that this sort of road that I marked here in purple needed to be actually right next to the hub. And so rather than moving the road, because I kind of liked it hugging the edge of this cliff here, I decided to go ahead and just move the hub. And to do this, I just quickly marked down in vertex color, which we usually use to actually make something pretty. But in the meantime, it's just going to be my quick little notes here, where, you know what, that hub is going to be over there. No one will ever know that this happened. We'll just get rid of that there. And from that point on, we can just sort of say, okay, cool. We're making really large changes, and we're not attached to anything at this stage.
That's exactly right. Sorry, Chris, let me interrupt you real quick.
Absolutely.
So what you're seeing here is WoW Edit, but it is also the game. We can run around in here and figure out if the road is in the right place. The reason why that hub moved is because we're playing this part. As simple as it is, we're going in early and figuring out our spaces and our timing between the roads.
Well, it's not painful right now. Right now you can move things around. You can be very malleable about what you're getting ready to do without being expensive not only to the art, but to yourself, where you don't want to
That's right.
cut yourself off too soon.
Is there anything else you wanted to add, Christy? Are we good?
I think that's about it. That's
awesome.
the beginning of a zone.
Okay, pretty cool. Thank you, Christy.
Don't forget that everybody has a different way to make it. So you have some people that will make it start this way, others will have different ways to do it. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you, Christy. Very cool, very cool. All right, let's move on to Victor. Remember, Victor, we're going to look at this screen right here, see what he does. So answer us the first question. How did you get started on the zone you were going to show?
Yeah, so here we have this really awesome key art piece that one of our concept artists, Jimmy Lowe, did for Revendreth. So what this does is it sets up the overall look, tone, and mood of the zone. You can see there's this huge castle in the background. There's all this Gothic architecture that's sort of dilapidated. And then down here we've got these forests and these shadowy parts below. Yeah. And this does a good job of, setting up what the zone's going to look like throughout the vast majority of it. But we want to keep players interested and introduce some nice visual breakup along the way. We call that a sub-biome or a subzone. In the case of Revendreth, we didn't have a concept for that. So we got into the editor and we started to pitch our own ideas in what we call like a 3D sketch, or you can almost think of it like a speed paint. And what we're focused on right now is just doing a lot of macro work, big picture idea. We're trying to get this to a point where...
Let me stop you for just 1 second, Vic, really quick. So we just saw a concept, and this is your initial design. It looks nothing like what Christy did. This looks almost finished. So it looks like, I think he's using some other assets from another zone is what we're doing.
Luckily, we get to pull from a few.
There's a couple.
There's just two.
Couple trees.
Now, you have 15 years of different items that have been made and created. Like he's looking, Gilneas is one of the things he's touching right now.
Yeah.
Kind of flowing with the Gothic theme. And he's getting to kind of riff off of an idea. Sometimes we don't have the time or sorry, that's not the way to put it. Sometimes we don't have the resources always to just come up with concept art and get drawn for every little area of the zone. And what they're trying to do right now is basically take different assets, put them together, and come up with something so that the player doesn't get burnt out after looking at a few hours of the same kind of forest treatment.
Yeah, I mean, you know that right there. We got 15 years of assets that we're using, and we're really just trying to find something that represents a similar shape, size, or silhouette as what you saw in that concept art piece. You can even see over here, we're using an entire Gilnean village that will eventually represent a new village when we get some new assets and new pieces. We've got some Kultiran rune pieces, things like that. We're just focused on big picture. We know all this stuff's going to change eventually, but it gives a pretty nice representation of what the final product's going to be again when you squint your eyes.
Nice.
But that's really only half the process here in this first step. The other part is, of course, terrain work. So I can go ahead and show you how some of those tools work right now. So we have our terrain brush right here, and we can raise and lower the terrain. We can use our plateau brush and sample different heights and flatten out spaces. This is great for creating combat spaces or areas where large quadrupeds need to be walking around on. Take our smooth brush and we can smooth out the rough edges there, make it easier to navigate on for players. And we all have different brushes set up for different designers. You can change the strength, size, fall off, shape. They all do different things. And later on in the process, you can see if I turn on this grid right here, you can see how our terrain's tessellated. Did these different quads, and when we're in our polish mode, we'll get really tiny brushes, and we'll be lowering pixels and raising pixels and doing things to sculpt some fine details. But again, right now, we're really just focused on big picture idea, just trying to get buy-in from different departments and see if this concept sells.
Nice. Excellent job, Victor. Thank you very much. Awesome. Let's move on. Very good. You know what Victor does is a little more like I like to start a zone, because not everybody can imagine what my intentions are for it. So I like to pull as much of our old assets and try to make it look as much like the concept as I can. And so very different ways to start. But talk about different, what do you got to show us? Oh, Kyle, before you start, remember what Kyle's work is going to be over here on this screen right there. So this is what we're going to look at for Kyle.
All right, so we're looking at Nyalotha today, and when we're making a raid, we approach things pretty differently, and in some ways, than we approach designing a zone. So for starters, it's a much more linear experience, so we have a lot more control over what the player is going to see. We're trying to figure out what Nyalotha is going to be in the first place. We had this really awesome picture from the Chronicles book to reference.
Nice.
So, trying to recreate that is a little intimidating. But
yeah, what did you think when you saw that? When you're like, yeah, we're going to need you to do that right there. That'd be great.
Okay. Yeah. We'll see what
You're like,
we can do.
okay.
Usual answer.
Yeah.
So
not his first rodeo.
No.
He's good.
So, we're starting out pretty loose. I mean, you can see already we got some awesome pyramids from our dungeon art team. And so that kind of gives a little bit of an idea of what that's going to look like. But then the gameplay space for this main area here is still not really defined. So I'm using blockout pieces, just really simple, untextured, non-artified pieces.
So you can scale those. You can
Oh yeah, I can
make them. Yeah, whatever.
I can
you
make
want.
them huge or tiny, whatever size feels right. And we actually have little like scale models that we can see. Like, oh, here's a guy. He's really tiny. Maybe this is all way too big. So I've actually been pulling everything in tighter and just making the space a lot more condensed. Obviously we want the space to feel big and massive and epic.
Sure.
But you don't want to spend a half hour running to the next boss.
Well, he's a little bit different here. He has an open world. They have to worry about how whatever they make has to become real. It has to be something that you.
Well, you have to be able to go there.
Yeah.
To walk there, but not.
He gets a little bit more here. He gets to be free form about it.
Yeah, so I can kind of cheat with the mountains and stuff in the backgrounds here.
That can be almost anything.
Exactly.
Right.
So early on in this stage, I'm just really loose shapes. Big mountains. Really just kind of messing with the silhouettes here, and they don't need to be totally pretty. Just kind of getting the big picture, the idea of what it could look like.
Nice.
And then it's really just all about keeping it loose and iterating on feedback. We run through these spaces with the encounter designers. We have these tools that show us, like this object right here is a 50-yard radius disc. We know that is going to be a great amount of space for a boss encounter. So you can actually see that this boss fight space up on top of this pyramid is nice and a big comfy space to fight a giant dragon. So yeah, just keeping it loose and iterating.
Well, in Dungeon Raid, he's worried more about like the player flow. Where's the collision at? Where the encounter space is going to be. He's being very conscientious of melee and range classes, trying to make sure it's fun for both.
That's right.
Yeah,
You can quickly iterate without having to send off to art.
You can, and just like what we saw with Christy and Vic, all these spaces are playable. We can run around in them right away.
Right.
As he's making this stuff, we can use it. We can walk around on these platforms even as we scale them and work them, so we can figure out what we like to do. Well, that's really cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kyle.
Really good. All right, let's go. Yeah, give it up for Kyle. Awesome.
I love that, Kyle.
Hey. Let's go back over here to Christy. Remember, Christy's monitor is going to be right up here, so we're going to talk about, wow, look at what we've done here. It's totally different. It's like a cooking show. We just sort of,
Pull it out of the oven.
this is how quick she works.
Yes.
It's almost looking like a zone, huh?
That's right.
All right, so at this stage in development, we're doing a lot of collaboration with Quest Design. And for Quest Design in particular, we'll sometimes try to sell them ideas just based on some little art ideas that we have at the beginning here. In this particular case, we had this section that is sort of covered in spider webs right now. We thought it might be neat if the folks that were living in these spaces were kind of sneaky, kind of spidery. Maybe they're, spy masters or something interesting like that, where they are, creeping around through the shadows, keepers of knowledge, all that fun stuff. And that's kind of hard to tell with just a bunch of mushrooms. So we ended up grabbing a bunch of spider webs and dropping them in here and pitching that to Quest Design. And they loved it. They ended up really wanting to work with that. And they also really enjoyed the idea of having something in the back here where it could be the culmination of all of your questing in this particular POI. So as you can see, the road is still in here. It's still marked in this bright purple. But it doesn't quite help you get into that space. So what I'll end up doing is actually replacing my purple lines here with the proper road texture that I've been given by my environment art team. And that'll help a little bit. We'll go ahead and erase some of this purple here. And now you've sort of got this stone, but that doesn't actually lead you into the space still. And what we're gonna wanna do is to indicate that this is a path, but it's not a safe path. I want to use a very different texture. So I'm going to grab this dark red mud here and just sort of snake it through the space, kind of get it in the general direction of where we're going to end up sending the player. Sort of got a trail here, so we'll move that like that. And we still have a little bit of terrain here that's in the way. We don't necessarily need that anymore. So we'll just go ahead and flatten that out, make a nice little ramp here. And now we can really start guiding the player back through the space. That's still not quite enough though, and this spider web is cool, but it gets a little hard to see, especially once the fog comes in. And even if these are sneaky spy master guys, they deserve a cool spot to live. So we're gonna take this small guy here and just drop it out of there. And go ahead and place a nice, big, beautiful building.
Ooh, scary.
And these are awesome props that we get from the WMO team. They end up giving us just these beautiful large buildings. And it makes it really easy to have a nice centerpiece for any POI that you're trying to build out.
Nice. That's the dungeon team mostly. We could call it WMO as a type of file. So what Christy is doing here, I forgot to say, is answering our second question. What happens after the blue sky time? What is that iteration process?
We spend most of our time here. This is the time where you're constantly going through, is a play space fun enough? Are we framing the POIs correctly? Is it getting the player in? And then when you get into it, is it even fun to play through? Is it too compact? Do we need to open it up? So we're going through a lot of those iterative questions.
Those questions we can hopefully answer with the layout when we have a little more prompts and a little more player guidance that we can put into it.
Exactly. Having these, textures fully fleshed out, having these buildings and all these assets ready makes it much easier for us to sort of really sell our vision and get people to buy into what the space is going to play like. We're down in here running around constantly, and that's sort of how we realize when things are or aren't working.
That's right. And Jim, once we get some props, it's really fun to figure out how far you can go with them. How much more can you get out of a certain thing, or how they're supposed to look in the world. That's the fun part.
And playing with it, you often start figuring out what things need to be modified, changed. Does that wall need to be longer? Does the wall need to be shorter?
That's true. That sort of iteration is going to happen again. All right. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you so much,
Very good. Let's give it up for Christy. Awesome. All right. Let's come over to Victor. Remember, his monitor's right up here. Let's look up here. Answer for us the second question, what happens in the middle?
Yeah, so you can see that the layout for this area has been a little bit more well-refined, and now we're in the process of talking to the other departments to create an asset list of all the different deliverables we need to complete the sub-biome for Rubendreth. We work with all the different departments to do that, but in this particular case, we're working with the environment team to set up what we call an environment art demo. So this is still using some placeholder props, but it's also using some new assets that have been created. And we're trying to create a space in context where we can place all those assets and start to get a picture of how this is going to end up. So you can see that we've got all these different trees in here, and they have these really cool silhouettes and stuff. But it's really important that we look at this in context. So you can see that our horizon line, it's pretty bright. These trees could possibly get noisy with their silhouettes. So this is something we'll work with the artist to tweak, or we may just decide we don't need quite as many trees in the space, calm it down a little bit. But we're working on creating these clusters that sort of help establish a visual language for the space. So
let me stop you real quick. I think that's interesting. So Victor said that we are making a list, an asset list. So that's where the collaboration part comes in. We could just say, hey, we know we need some sort of tree, some sort of bush. The art team is going to creatively work out, based on our story, how those things look, even if they are a bush. Doesn't have to be a bush, could be something else. So we're going to work together and figure out the style. These trees could look like anything. The art department is making those creative choices with us.
And something else he talked about too was the clusters, is bringing these groups together. A lot of times we get the trees, the bushes, the plants, and we put them in small groups, and allows us to iterate, spit them. No, that's not a very good word. Distribute them evenly
there you go.
throughout the zone. Spit is not a very good word.
Uh-huh.
Another thing we identified too is also the colors. As you can see right here, he's playing with the purple bush. Didn't quite work in the scene.
yeah, we're trying to figure out how this stuff all works together. And you pointed out that bush. Maybe it didn't really work that well up here. Maybe it works better down here and this space in here. Players are pretty good at noticing when something feels off, because just even though it's a Shadowlands and it's high fantasy, it is similar to nature. There are these sort of rules that we use to build out these spaces, make sure it's consistent.
Consistent with nature is what we're trying to duplicate real life, and not a lot of people study nature, but they know when it's wrong. So we're trying to take all this stuff and make it look realistic. You notice nothing we're doing is procedurally done. That means nothing is created by the computer or automatically.
No, everything is done by hand. Every little group of, it's at least been touched once. Textures to just the composition of the entire scene.
Exactly.
Yeah, and speaking of the textures, that's another thing that we're generating in this asset list request for the other teams. Is you can see that we've got this really cool orange moss over here that we're using. And if I turn on this grid, you can see that our terrain's subdivided a little bit differently from what I showed earlier with the terrain tool. If I turn on this little eyeball down here, you can see that each of these grids is associated with a number, and none of the numbers go above 4. There's a good reason for that. It's because we're limited to 4 different terrain textures per each one of these grids. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to do when we're getting that list from the environment team for our terrain textures is we're trying to get the most bang for our buck with the textures that we request.
Nice.
It's absolutely huge. Like, textures have to make sure that because you're limited to the 4s, they have to make a difference. Having one texture down there is very similar won't help us. We have to make sure each texture sells itself well.
It's a self-imposed performance limitation that we've given ourselves to try to stick with 4 textures per chunk. And so you noticed we're putting these textures down with a pen, and it's an electronic tablet or a monitor tablet, so everything's pressure sensitive and painted. Very artsy sort of thing. All right, anything you wanted to add? I think we're good?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Can we move on? Okay, thanks, Victor.
Thank you, Victor.
That was awesome. Let's go over here to Kyle. All right, Kyle, answer for us the second question. Kyle's monitor's going to be right over here, so check out what Kyle's working on up on that screen. What do you got?
So, just keep working on this raid here, and we've been running through it with the encounter team and getting feedback from Art and everybody, and one common bit and the level design team, and honestly, like, one really great bit of feedback that I got was that even though the space felt right and there was a nice spacing between bosses and trash poles and stuff, it just felt weird being on these platforms all the time, and it got a little repetitive and redundant. So I decided just to pull out some terrain from this little mountain that I built under this pyramid here, and just kind of keep iterating and adding terrain in conjunction to the architecture that we've got.
Nice. And
just bringing it all together. Actually, was just using this ramp tool that we have. It's really nice, saves us a bunch of time, especially for like gameplay block out kind of stuff, because
they're so spoiled. Ramp tool. We didn't have a tool like that when we were starting vanilla WoW or original WoW.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
It's actually the way we sometimes use it just to get into or make a ramp up or road, what have you. A lot of times I would even go up and down by putting the verts to get depressions and raises within them to make it feel a lot more organic.
And you can see we have this cool tool here that shows us the terrain turns red when it becomes too steep to be pathable. So, players couldn't run up that. So we just got to be really careful with that and make sure that everywhere that seems like a good place to run is actually runnable. And, we use textures to really get that idea across. So, this is all rock. You can't really tell where you're supposed to run. So, we bring in some dirt and, oh, look, there's dirt. I can run on the dirt. And if you see dirt going up a hillside that you can't run up, that's not going to be good. So we're always really careful about that sort of visual language that we have.
It's guiding the player, trying to tell the player where best to go or where not to go, or
so yeah,
please don't go that way.
We have little rules too, like you try to put rock where you don't want the intended player to go, right?
Sure.
You don't want to they don't want to see dirt going up a road and they think they can go that way and then they bump into something.
We want it to be transparent. We want people to understand how the game is supposed to be seen.
Exactly. So yeah, at this point, I just keep taking all that feedback, and another big bit of feedback that we got at this point was, maybe we have enough tentacles. Maybe the second half of the raid can double down on tentacles, and we got all the tentacles coming into Veil of Eternal Blossoms and Oldham. So let's just double down on the architecture here and make that extra crazy and some crazy volcano stuff. And now I'm just starting to push towards finishing everything.
Okay, can't wait to see the finished part. Thank you, Kyle. Let's move back over.
Last question. Your favorite.
Yes.
Right?
But before we get to that last question, I love coming to BlizzCon because I get to meet as many people as want to meet us, and we want to take as many questions as we can. So we're going to have Craig right here, and we're going to have Jestry coming up right over here. So if you have any questions for us today, you can start to line up here, and we'll be glad to take those real quick. Okay, let's get to our questions here. The last one, my favorite part, like Jim said, polish. The best part.
This is the completion. This is when you're finally taking it. All the visions, everybody's iterated. We've already gotten all the feedback about whether this pace is good to flow through. Is it framed right?
So we're going to look right at this monitor over here is going to be Christy. So why don't you walk us through how you attack the polish part in Maldraxxus?
Polish is super fun. Like you said, it's really where you're getting down at the player's level and finding all the neat things that you can really show them. I like to swap between the game view mode at this point because this is actually showing what everything looks like with our lighting and our fog and some shadows and all that cool stuff. Typically, I'll start by actually really polishing some of my road stuff. I want to make sure that I have very clear demarcations of, hey, this is a safe place. This has road markers, it's got lighting on it, it's well paved, and it's going to guide you toward where you have to go, but not necessarily cut through the space like we showed earlier as we made our sort of secondary path. We can also notice that some of the textures around here have a little bit more depth to them than we may have noticed before. This comes back to that vert color that I was mentioning earlier. You can see these little dots on the screen here. These all indicate places where I've painted color on top of my terrain textures to give them just a little bit more oomph. We've got some areas where we've set up, really bright color to sort of bring out that this is a path that's leading into this cave back here. And there's other times where we just want to adjust the color a little bit. And I think in this one over here, we've got some light blue on the edges to make this dark color pop a lot more, as well as give it more of a sickly look in this space.
Nice.
This is also a time where we're spending a lot of time on the ground playtesting our content. We're working with Quest Design to follow their quest flows through the area because we've been looking at these zones for a long time. We're working on them, and while other people will come and go and help you out with your zone every once in a while, you really get tired of looking at it at some points, and you'll end up missing things like giant holes in the ground where you can accidentally fall into, and you got to make sure that you smooth those out. Or maybe if it's even something as simple as, that path that we tried to mark through the space earlier is really obvious to us because we built it and we know that that's the way you're supposed to go. But for someone that's never been in the zone before, they may have a different opinion and say, hey, look, I could not tell that this actually looped around.
Exactly. Let me stop you there real quick. You're onto something really interesting because it is so important that we get as many people to look at these zones as possible because like Christy said, we miss some things. The obvious things, the
you
colors,
get invested. You start spending all your time in here. Sometimes you don't see the obvious things. You realize you're using too much of this prop or not enough of the other. Or when you're maybe not pushing it enough.
It's really important.
Collaboration, like we talked about.
Look at that, how you tie
tie it together.
Speaking of collaboration, even these mountains were a collaboration here. You can see they're sort of polished up now. They've got their nice points. They've got textures running up in them. But we actually had another artist on the team, Travis Hickman, go ahead and build all of these mountains in a separate area. And he built them in such a way that we can very easily copy and paste them all through this space. So these are really nice, and it makes it super easy to fill out these back areas because we really want to spend our time focusing on all of the really neat small detail that the player is going to be enjoying on the ground here. But it's still very important to get those mountain silhouettes in. So making something like a copy and paste mountain kit for the background just helps us get through this really quickly and allows us to focus on the part that I think we and you guys enjoy the most.
Nice.
Thank you so much,
Christy.
Christy.
Wait, hold on. There's something else I want to talk about Maldraxxus. I want to come clean a little bit.
Oh, there we go, yeah.
So this zone is still in its early stages, right?
A lot of this stuff has not been locked in or agreed upon or just decided
That's
upon.
right.
So we're still going through that
Some of the
process.
stuff you're seeing and some of the props are a couple weeks old. So we're really just now working on this zone. So it may look a little different. It may look just like this, but we really like the way it's looking
Well, if you
now.
can, remember this POI when we see it come out in the actual game and see what changes in it. There's things that we do all the time. We're always constantly changing as we find out it just doesn't work or what needs to be more emphasized.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Christy.
Yes, thank you. Let's move on.
Victor.
Okay, back to Victor, back to the middle screen. How do you answer the best question, Polish? Show us.
Yeah, so here we are with Render Depth again, and we're definitely in the polish phase now. You can see that a lot of that environment art demo stuff we were creating in the last phase has been propagated throughout the rest of the
So these
film.
are the actual props that aren't
Yep.
placeholder, right?
Yeah, these are all the new assets that have been created specifically for Shadowlands. And something that Christy touched based on is at this point, you know, we've had a lot of different level designers in the space, all collaborating, adding their own new ideas. And here's an example of that. I don't know if you guys remember, but there used to be a bridge here in the last section that I showed, and it's now been kit bashed in this sort of ruined out structure using some of those assets we requested from the last phase. So it's a cool chance to use these pieces creatively in a new, different way to create some interesting gameplay spaces. Like underneath here, got some little secret alcoves hidden in the shadows, things like that. And light and shadow play a big role in this zone, so it's cool that we've been able to do that.
To be honest, you can't even underplay this. We're
Oh, yeah.
constantly taking all these pieces. You can get so much time and so much effort can be done, and you can get so much art. But after a while, you have to start trying to find use that art in different ways, so you can still tell multiple stories without having to request a brand new piece every time you turn around.
That's right.
Kit
It's
bashing.
getting the
Yeah.
bang for your buck out of
Yeah.
out of every piece.
Much as you
figuring out.
possibly can.
Sometimes you flip over something entirely new, and now we have a new way of looking at it.
Sometimes you piss off art.
Sometimes you do.
Hey.
I have to tell you real quick, one time in Calteris, the story I was trying to sell was a mine car, a little mine. So I took a barrel and some dinner plates and a box and some smoke and some train tracks, and someone on the team was like, I didn't know we had a mine train. I'm like, it's not, it's just kit bash. It's just stuff put together
And Art
to
was
tell
really
a story.
happy about that.
Well, sure they were, but it's just trying to use stuff as well as we can.
Right.
That's right, that's right. That's all Victor's doing here.
Go ahead, Rick. Sorry we interrupted there.
Yeah, and the other part that we're doing in this phase is a lot of lighting and effects and atmospherics. So you can see we have some cool fog volumes and things like that in here, but what I'm going to show you now is our point light tool and our lighting tool. If I turn on this, you can see where they're all placed right now. I'll go ahead and select one of these point lights and show you how it works. So if I copy this, paste it all on over here, open up our editor, you can see that we can pick all the different colors from the color wheel. So, you know, we can make a yellow, we can make a green, anything on here. In this case, we're sticking with our orange. We can increase the intensity. So I'll actually turn this off so you can see a little bit better. We can increase the size, the fall off, make it really bright, and we can even animate them. So this adds a little bit of movement into the scene, makes it feel more alive. I'll turn it way up so you can just see what it does.
Nice.
It's a little bit more like disco lights there. I like to keep it a little bit more subtle, just add a little bit of movement to the scene. But this is a really cool tool. And we've also got something called spotlights too. These work a little different from our point lights. You can think of point lights similar to the sun in that they emit light in every direction. Spotlights emit it in one direction, similar to a flashlight. You can see how that works here. Turn this up. But these are cool. They play a big role, again, in this section of the zone. We can even add transparencies in front of them so that they cast specific patterns and shadows. which is a really cool function of them. And
Cool.
yeah, it just really puts it over the top of the next polish phase.
Well, it's all like tying it again to polish, right? You've gone through,
Yeah.
you've done the texturing, you've done all the doodadding. Now the lights are trying to, there's little embellishments either to drag the player's eye to an area you want them to go to, or just to kind of help sell the atmosphere.
And that's just one piece of the lighting tools we have.
Yeah,
we have the zone lights and the environment and the
Ambient.
color of the water, the fog, all of that is tied to lighting. So there are many different lighting tools we can use to tell a story.
Absolutely. Thank you so
All
much.
right, Victor, let's move on. Thank you guys. Thank you very much, Victor. Awesome job. I'll drag this out. Okay, I'm anxious to see what this, look at this, completely different. Okay, with Kyle, remember, look over here and see what he's got for us.
Wait,
Wow,
well,
look at
so,
that.
So for starters, since last time you guys saw this, this final WMO, all those goofy looking blue
All those ramps
I
you had here, yeah. They're all textured.
Dungeon Art
They
came
look pretty
back
nice.
with this beautiful thing here, and it connects everything. And I just have one piece to drop in, and it connects to everything. And then I've been spending my time just polishing up the terrain and the backdrops, kind of everything. And it's really fun to jump around. There's so much to do. You got the background stuff and the foreground stuff.
Well, let's quick, because what you've done before is he's taken all those pieces, once you've gotten the ramps, the fight spaces, how the player's going to actually flow through the zone. He'll explore all that out and give it to the art team, who then comes in and embellishes this.
And artifice it, because they know how big it's going to be. Exporting just means you're going to take all these pieces, put it in another 3D program, and build on top of it, right? Just like that.
So yeah, and you guys were talking about kit bashing earlier.
Yeah.
Actually, down here at the base of this giant old god mouth, I used some textures, some rocks from Arathi Basin, and some gross, I don't even know what it's supposed to be, from the Underrot, and vert painted it purple,
Sure.
and extended this thing out into the lava, or
lava.
molten old god blood, whatever this new awesome liquid type we got is.
Nice.
So yeah, this awesome red lava here is a new asset that we got, and we got all these new waterfalls and stuff.
Lava falls, yeah.
Yeah, so
Never done lava before.
yeah, before it was just kind of like a more terrestrial, regular-looking lava, and this crazy like reddish stuff.
So your background there is essentially like a matte painting, because you can do almost, it's just visual.
a little
right?
bit. It's 3D, so.
But you don't have, you can't go there, so.
Right. So we can do any sort of crazy stuff we want.
Right.
So like I was playing with these rocks to make interesting silhouettes in the background.
Nice.
Usually we use terrain to make as much of the rocks as we can, just because that's kind of the style of Azeroth. But here in Nyalotha, using a little bit more doodad props, that we can get some crazy overhangs that we can't with just sculpting terrain. And it's cool because we don't have to worry about finishing everything off, because the backside, nobody's ever going to see it.
Yeah.
So, the pyramids don't even have to have a back. You can see here, they're just open. The mountains are completely unfinished, but no one's ever going to see that. They're just going to see the pretty stuff that we plan on them seeing.
Well, don't you have the skybox here?
Well, yeah, so that is, we collaborate a lot with all the artists, like we were saying, and Servando made this amazing skybox.
Nice.
And so I worked really closely with him to make sure that the 3D space blends really well with the background. And right in here is where things change. This is all 3D here, and this is all 2D matte painting in the back there.
So that is a screenshot, right?
This
That's
is a
not
screenshot
a
right out of
concept.
the raid.
Okay.
Yep, right out of the game.
Nice.
So it's from about right here.
Awesome.
Nice.
Great job. Well, that looks really good. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Basically, yes. Basically, that's the process. I wish we had more time to talk about some of the other theories and the other things. But there is one more tool I would like to mention that we have, and that's sound and music. It's something not everybody thinks about, but it is very visual. It is the stuff you see beyond the trees. The sound and the music of a zone is very emotional. I can tell you if a zone is dangerous or hot or cold even.
Well, it sets the tone. So we're visually
the
trying
tone.
to show you something. Sound actually connects all
Oh,
that.
I think it's half the picture, really. And the sound team does a similar process we do. They look at concept art, they think of emotional words, and they attach music with it, because the progression you go through as a player can be tracked musically as well as visually, right?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to mention that. Okay, that wraps it up for About Us. I would love to go to questions. That's what BlizzCon is all about. So who wants to go first? JR, okay, Jestry, go ahead.
Hi there. On a big open world where everything is connected and you have zones that share boundaries, how do you handle parallel editing between multiple level editors and merging the boundaries and things like that?
You mean like people overwriting maybe that's a great question. We had to work that out pretty quickly with WoW Edit. So what we do is we have what's called a checkout process. You select the chunks you're going to work on, and they turn red and they make it inaccessible for any other artist to overwrite your own work.
You open it up, actually.
So if we're trying to work on the same area, Kyle may have some of the section I want to work on. I have to sort of work on something that he's not, or I could work on something what's called locally, where I could put.
So we have the real chunks here, and as you can see, we can actually make sure that certain people can check out certain chunks. That way we don't overlap. It does happen, and we have to be careful because if you are working in an area, you can do it work locally. You can easily wipe out the next person's work, which of course makes them very happy because they saved it. But we have to be very careful. So they forcibly locked us out. That's one.
There's another thing. I don't even know if I can mention that. Maybe I can. But we don't always do the zones. There are also branches of the game like patches and in different expansions that we work on. The potential for overwriting or making mistakes is even bigger for stuff like that. So good question. Let's go over here to Craig.
Never happens though, right?
Never happens, right?
Never happens.
So I wanted to know a little bit more about the tool itself. Does each designer get to make their own like brushes and things like that, or does that come from another team that does the development of this tool?
Both. We have a tools team, plus the individual level designers can create and save their own brushes. It's very much like Photoshop, where they have their favorites, their favorite tile sets, textures, groups, plus the way the functionality of the brush works. I think if you look again...
You see at the top left there, he can actually make a copy of these and then just keep modifying whether the strength, the size, the fall off, whether it's pressure sensitive. You have...
his are going to be different than mine. Mine are going to be different than Kyle's. Yeah, it's like Photoshop. If you're familiar with that, you can save a brush.
All of my brushes are from Kyle.
What was that?
All of my brushes are from Kyle.
Yeah,
His set when I first started, and
Kyle's
they're
got some
good,
good
so I
brushes.
keep using them.
Nice. Good question. Thank you. Awesome. We have one more over here.
Basically, I just want to ask about the time of day. How does that affect your decisions in terms of the level that you're designing, as well as the weather? What tools do you have to exploit that?
Great question. There's a couple tools there that affect that. Time of day is huge. Usually when we start a zone, we're going to start it at noon and figure out what noon looks like, and then we figure out the other times of day. It's a huge effect on the way the game looks, so every time of day we make look good. Weather is an entirely different skybox, so anytime it starts to rain, that's a whole new light that comes in. It slowly comes in at a certain speed, and it completely changes everything. Early on, when we had quests where we wanted to change the world and make it look like you affected something, we would make it rain 10%, so it wouldn't actually rain, but it would change the sky, and it was a way to affect a change. Now we can make a sky appear on an individual player, independent of a player next to you. It's sort of like
client side versus server.
Yeah, it's really different that way. But I know. Okay, I'm going to say it, but this is known that when we were working on World of Warcraft, we had an accelerated day and night. The day and night cycle was about 4 hours, and you could see the sunset, you could see the sunrise, and everybody liked it. Alan Adham was a big fan of another game that had a different time of day, and it was time is what he said, and so he wanted a real time, so we went to that, and that was fun. So when you go there at midnight, it's midnight, and noon is noon. So no, good question. It's a story. Sorry, I'm just answering everything.
You just keep going.
You have such a wealth of knowledge.
First of all, thank you guys for everything that you do. The zones, the emotions they invoke are just my favorite part of the game.
That's great. Thank you.
It was really interesting hearing that all of your backgrounds were different that brought you to this one place to do this job. Is there anything that you could recommend to someone who is looking to become an environment designer or a level designer?
Start making games.
Do it. Like, the best thing I can tell you to do is actually experiment. Like, there's so many editors out there now. There's YouTube. There's tons of things you can actually get into. Actually build an environment for yourself. Don't build a world. Don't build this huge area. Build a small, confined space. build the entirety from the beginning to end and identify what you like. Did you like making the models? Did you like doing the lighting? Because you're going to be a little bit compartmentalized. We get to touch everything, but we don't make the models. We get to suggest we'd like change on the model, but we don't build it. But you might find out you really love the texturing, the animation. So build something, build a small scene, and the completion of that scene, you're usually by the end of it, if you can even make it through it, you'll decide what you really like most about that thing.
That's right.
Yeah, when I started making maps, I had never dreamed of being a level designer or a game designer. I was just doing it for fun, and then here I am.
That's right.
Yeah,
There's lots of world designing software out there to sort of demonstrate your passion or your ability to us. It's not like we have WoW Edit out there that you can use, but...
I mean, look at Gary. He was a lead environment artist, and then he finally found his calling in level design. So he finally came to us.
I did.
This is what I should do.
Yeah, actually,
I've never been happier.
making maps in different map editors. Blizzard obviously had a lot of really great ones. Warcraft 2, 3, StarCraft. There's a bunch, and I think you just get in those, start making things, kind of find what you like. I actually started as an environment artist and then eventually made the switch to level design. So there's a lot of different avenues and paths to get here.
You know, that brings up a good answer real quick. We do look for people that are more artistic than designing. It's more of a creative tool. It's like a 3D Photoshop. So it's easier to train the design bits than the art.
Well, that's the thing is we're a little bit of a hybrid. Sometimes you say level design, they think about you're working on the flow or you do the scripting. And we're a little bit of a mix. We do about 70% art. You spend many, many months painting rocks, and you spend many months, then you spend about 30% on that time worried about how the player's flowing through that space. Are you framing it correctly? Did you do a good call out? And does it feel rewarding, or does the player want to shoot himself at the end of this experience?
Your ability to tell a story through level design is what we're looking for.
But build one.
Cool, good question. Let's go, another one.
You're just not popular, Jestry.
Nobody likes you, Jestry.
I do.
Oh dear, thank you.
Go ahead.
Same as the last person, wanted to say thank you so much for everything you do. Like,
Thank you.
yeah, it's wonderful.
This is a blessing, to be honest.
And thanks for coming.
You're very welcome.
I know that was
Thank you.
a big effort.
Love doing it.
But
So my main question is, how much of the process changes when you're designing a level for PvP? So like battlegrounds, arenas, just open world PvP. Like, just how much of it changes when you're just...
There's a lot of things we're worried about. LOS, line of sight, trying to block those things.
I'd say it's more similar to like a raid or something, because you know it's a smaller space. You know generally where players are going to be. It's not some massive space. You do have the fun little kind of random areas that maybe won't be like a key gameplay space, but it's a little bit more of a planned out.
Well, you're being intentional. You don't want to put things on a player that are going to make him jump all over the screen or cause collision issues. You're just being a lot more intentional, just exactly like he put in dungeon raid space. You're being very aware of where the player's either going to hide or what he's going to be pathing around, and keeping the place someone can find.
Yeah. We also need to be careful with small props like little rocks and bushes. You don't want goblins hiding in a bush or people getting stuck on a rock. All sorts of little stuff like that too.
Yeah, one other thing is making sure it's fair for both sides. We do a lot of testing to make sure like run times are the same between capture points or graveyards and things like that. Make sure we're not giving any advantages to other sides by accident.
Well, trying not to.
Yeah.
It's got to be fun.
Most of the solutions we have for open world PvP are sort of just the same general design philosophies that we go through in making a regular space playable. We're not necessarily thinking about who's going to fight, some other person here, but if you've got enough space to fight creatures, if a ranged player has enough room to leap back, or if a melee character can get in close without running into small rocks, it's about, basically the same when you're in the open world area.
Good question. Thank you very
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the comments, too. That was
Also,
great. Go ahead, Jester. You got some
I got
people.
some friends over here.
Nice. Let's hear from them.
So this question is specifically for you, Victor. You spoke about when you're starting your level design that you will have the concept art and then you'll kind of make a quick sketch or a quick version of the area. How is the conversation in a one-on-one capacity between you and the concept artist who designed the framework for Revendreth versus, the amount of time you spend solo working on the area?
So we're always working with the other teams pretty much on a daily basis. We're always sending back and forth or a messenger open, sending screenshots back and forth with them, trying to spark new ideas with them. They might create a new concept based off something I've done, or they might just even give me a suggestion, something to incorporate into what I'm doing. So it is a really collaborative effort. We're really going back and forth on a daily basis, and using whatever they give us as a jumping point, but the idea always evolves.
Yeah. When we're making, I could just jump on that a little bit. When we're making a new zone and we have a concept, I like to, so we're in a room and there's 3 or 4 of us and we're deciding different ideas. I want to make sure that there's clarification about my idea or someone else's idea. We think we may be thinking of the same thing. I can go into the editor and say, here's what I was thinking this could look like. And someone else could be like, that's not at all what I was thinking. That let's go a different direction, because not every time do we have a concept like Victor had. Sometimes you need to do an in-game concept. Good question. Sorry, let's move on.
I was wondering, when it comes to building a level design portfolio, do you think it's better to work with small groups of people on games and do like 80% level design and then spend 20% of your time doing things like game design and QA, but have a more finished, complete product that kind of gives your level more context? Or do you think it's better to just open up level editors and 100% time building levels?
That'd be a good question for Matt, actually.
You want to show that you like have knowledge of just how games work in general and stuff, but I'd definitely say double down on the level design for sure.
Yeah, we want to see a story, a reason for everything. Everything we do has a story behind it, even like we're talking about the temperature or what you're going to do. How you guide a player is important to us, but the reasons why they're moving through a zone or the reasons why something should look scary or weird really illustrate that, and concentrate on duplicating nature. That's the hardest part, because erosion happens. Roads are depressed a certain way. They flow a certain way through a forest because they're going around rocks and other things like that. Nature, duplicate nature electronically. I like to see that. That's what I look for. I look for the more artistic expression from it. Someone else may be more story-oriented. All those things sort of help. I don't know. That's what I would look for.
Yeah, and you really don't need like 5 or 10 different pieces.
No.
Really important actually that you're focused. 2 or 3 really good examples of level design is probably enough in most cases. Just make sure those are really well done and show the case that you can do the work, and that's all it takes.
And intention, really, yeah. Just spend the time actually doing it. You'll start finding out. Don't go big and try to make us an island if you're actually going to fly. Try to make something that's a little bit more compact. Know what you're doing on the island, but focus more about the visual storytelling you do in a smaller area.
Yeah, my portfolio is super art focused. I started out as an environment artist in school, and so I ended up just doing a lot of really small scenes, really tight, polished, small spaces. And when I ended up getting my job at Carbine, I was able to learn from there that because this specific job is a little more art heavy than some other level design positions at other game studios might be, I was able to really tailor my portfolio when I was applying to Blizzard.
Nice.
Take criticism. Have a lot of people look at your things and give you the criticism. Be willing to take that feedback.
That's good. Get people to look at your stuff.
Yeah, we are very critical about what we do.
Great question. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question.
Hi.
When you're world building the environments, how do you stay updated on all of the new prop kits that you get to use?
That's a good question. We just we get emails about new props from our producers, but then also it takes a while to get familiar with everything in the game. I mean, the game's huge, and we just browse through giant lists, tiny little icons, so we kind of see what each one is. And, sometimes we'll have conversations in the room like, hey, does anybody know a good fog?
Well, we had a very bad naming convention. Some are wall sconces, other times a wall torch. Sometimes it's called...
The naming conventions is how we really... Yeah. That was the biggest thing, because we can search the libraries based on how things are named. So we will know when new things... Plus, it's collaboration. We would know that new things have come in. Plus, if I'm on the team and Victor on the team, I'd be like, we got a new vase. Have you seen this vase? It's really cool. And look all the things I can do with this one. And he'd be like, I have ideas for that. I know what I'm going to do with that.
It becomes a fountain.
Yeah, so it goes back to collaboration. It's a good question.
Part of the second process I was going through with creating that asset list is we're really spending some time with the different departments, making sure we know what they're making, giving them feedback on what they've already created, if anything need to be tweaked. So we have a pretty good understanding of what's coming in, since we're talking with them on a daily basis. And then we also have this other really cool thing It's an internal sort of art site where all the different artists can post what they've been working on and showcase it. So we check that all the time, get inspiration from them, and we get to see what they've been working on.
Victor, I need to cut you off, and thank you very much for the question. Jim, I'm afraid we are out of time. I want to talk to all of you guys. I see you there. I know some people there. We appreciate that you came to BlizzCon. We love it. We want to speak to as many people that want to talk to us. So we're all going to be right over here on the right of the stage. If you want to speak to us, there will be other level designers there as well. So I think that's about all we have time for, and that's about all we can
Thank you again
add.
so much for coming, seriously.
Yes, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Fun. All right. Thank you very much.